Selenium is essential for all selenoenzyme functions. There's about 30 to 40 selenoenzymes. These are enzymes you cannot live without. Without them, you are dead.
Seafood. Should everybody be eating?
Well, it certainly has a lot of health benefits, and all of our studies are now showing that although we were worried there were supposed to be risks, none of those risks are showing up in any of the studies that are currently ongoing. So actually all we're finding is benefits.
And how rigorous are those studies?
Well, actually the studies that are going on now are many times bigger and a lot more appropriate than any of the studies that were done before. Some of the earlier studies were done with whale meat consumption or people eating shark. And of course, since that's not what people eat as far as seafoods go, the results of those studies were inappropriate to apply to normal fresh ocean fish.
And the results now are showing what?
The results are actually showing increases in IQ. So child IQs are improved by mothers eating more ocean fish. In fact, actually, all of the warnings that we were thinking would protect against having harm to child IQ, it turns out that if the mothers avoid eating ocean fish, their child is far more likely to have reduced IQ rather than have any benefits from avoiding exposure to any of the contaminants that were causing concern.
Just to recap on that, if mothers avoid eating fish, their children are more likely to have a lower IQ.
Yep, all of the studies are finding the same thing, and that's, of course, that confused a lot of people, but the thing is, you don't argue with the data. You look at the data and you try and understand it. And now we actually understand that data, why it works out that way.
So the warnings initially were because of fears about methylmercury?
Yep, the earlier studies were based on findings that in Japan and Iraq, where there was really catastrophic exposures to mercury, there was such huge amounts of mercury in those mothers that their children were severely brain impaired. So there's no question at all that mercury is a severe neurotoxin. But the studies that were done to investigate whether or not exposures to mercury from seafood, the first ones were done in, for instance, New Zealand, where they found slight harms from eating seafood. But it turned out the seafood that was being consumed included sharks that had many, many times more mercury than normal varieties of ocean fish. Another study that was done was in the Faroe Islands, where more than 90% of the total mercury exposure came from eating pilot whale meat. And pilot whale meat mercury exposures did cause harm, but they found that the mothers that ate more ocean fish were protected against the harm from getting mercury from pilot whale meat. They didn't understand why that was, but now we do. It's really quite easy to understand.
And what is the protection? What affords protection against mercury that occurs in food?
Okay. All creatures that have brains have selenoenzymes present to protect their brains against oxidative damage. Mercury is the only thing we're aware of that can find and bind the selenium in the brain and totally stop selenoenzyme activities. That will cause oxidative damage throughout the brain, and that type of damage will cause death, severe impairments. However, in ocean fish, there is way more selenium than mercury present, so instead of causing harm, eating ocean fish protects against mercury poisoning. It's really the opposite of what everyone had thought. So a big change is coming in how we're going to be advising women regarding their seafood consumption.
Take us back for a moment. Selenium, what is it? It's an element, I presume.
Okay, selenium is one of the elements that's absolutely essential for life. Without selenium, you die. It's in the same family as oxygen and sulfur. Of course, without oxygen, you die within minutes. Without sulfur, you die within a half hour. Without selenium, you only have a few hours that you can live. So it's an absolute essential for life element. Now, the interesting thing is oxygen, because we need it for life, it's burned at very high rates in the brain. About 10 times more oxygen is burned per unit of brain mass than the rest of the body. Okay, so there's a huge risk in that because when you're consuming oxygen, every once in a while you make a reactive oxygen species that can cause harm to tissues. Because that can happen, we have sulfur-containing molecules that can intercept those nasty reactive oxygens and stop them from causing harm. However, you'd only be able to have that sulfur molecule protect you one time if you didn't have selenium-dependent enzymes that restored them back into the way they have to be in order to protect against oxidative damage. Now, selenoenzymes protect against oxygen in more ways than just acting on sulfur molecules. They also recycle vitamin C back into the reduced form. And of course, we all know how important vitamin C is as an antioxidant. It would only be good for one use, and that would take a millisecond, okay, for that vitamin C to be used up if we didn't have selenium-dependent enzymes recycling them back and making them competent for protecting against oxidative damage again. Why mercury poisoning is so terrible is it impairs the ability of selenoenzymes to recycle all of these essential antioxidants. Now, the bad news about our current warnings is we're telling women to avoid eating ocean fish, which is one of the best sources of selenium there is. 17 of the top 25 sources of selenium out of 1,100 foods that were studied are ocean fish. Now, ocean fish are also hugely rich in vitamin D and omega-3 fatty acids like DHA and EPA that we know the brain absolutely has to have. The bulk of the brain lipid composition is omega-3 fatty acids. So if a mother is going to be able to get the omega-3s to her baby, she has to be getting omega-3s from her diet. Now, even if moms are getting some omega-3 from their diet, they will quite often rob their own brains of their omega-3. A mother can lose up to 3% of their brain mass during pregnancy by trying to get more omega-3 across the placenta to build the baby's brain. So, increased seafood consumption, it's very easy to understand why it's important for making smarter, healthier babies.